Dear friends, welcome to another episode. Today we're talking about a place most people have never heard of, a small island that quietly handles much of Iran's oil exports. In a crisis between Iran and the United States, that tiny island could suddenly become one of the most strategic places in the world. Kharg Island. Kharg Island, the strategic oil hub Iran could use against the U.S., is not a dramatic military base or a fleet anchorage. It is a postage stamp of asphalt and concrete, roughly 20 square kilometers by common estimates, whose piers and tanks have quietly carried a disproportionate share of Tehran's lifeblood, crude oil. Control, denial, or disruption of Kharg would not just be a local tactical success or failure. It would strike directly at revenues, markets, and the political calculus that keeps the Iranian state solvent. The central question for policymakers and analysts is simple but grave. Could Kharg be weaponized by Tehran as leverage or by others as a target, in ways that meaningfully alter the balance with the United States without triggering uncontrollable escalation? Start with scale. Kharg's coastline is fitted with multiple berths capable of accommodating very large crude carriers. Historical reporting and analyst estimates suggest the terminal can host on the order of 10 VLCCs at anchor. Storage figures commonly cited in open sources put total tankage around 28 million barrels. Terminal throughput has been variously described. Some reports indicate rated loading capacity up to roughly 7 million barrels per day under ideal conditions, while practical peak export flows in past years reached approximately 3 to 4 million barrels per day. The island links to offshore fields via pipelines and acts as the collection and export node for fields that otherwise could not easily reach global tankers. Those numbers are reported in multiple public accounts. They should be checked against primary sources before being treated as precise facts. But the directional picture is clear. Kharg handles a large, concentrated share of Iran's seaborne crude exports. Why does concentrated oil infrastructure matter strategically? Because oil is money, and money is power. For a state that relies heavily on hydrocarbon exports to fund its security apparatus and social programs, a choke point like Kharg presents a tempting lever. Historical precedent reinforces that idea. Discussions during the late 1970s, most visibly in the run-up to the Carter administration's debates, identified Iranian terminals as critical vulnerabilities. During the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s, Kharg was attacked repeatedly and suffered significant damage, yet it was repaired and rebuilt. That resilience is itself a lesson. Infrastructure can be reconstructed, cargo rerouted, and markets adapt, but each disruption exacts political and economic costs that can alter behavior in the short term. That historical record also serves as a warning. Striking or disabling Kharg is not a one-off. Bombardment in the past reduced capacity temporarily, but did not permanently sever Iran's ability to export oil over the long term. Modern analysts therefore frame the issue as a time-sensitive problem. Short, sharp interventions might yield momentary leverage, but durability and second-order effects are decisive. What would an operation focused on Kharg look like in conceptual terms? Analysts often describe a limited, maritime-focused action as an option distinct from broader invasion. In that framing, a small, highly mobile force could seek to take or deny the terminals while naval assets establish a protective screen. The idea hinges on exploiting a window of degraded Iranian air defense or command and control effectiveness, followed by rapid seizure or demolition of key export nodes. Names of platforms: MV-22 Ospreys, tiltrotor aircraft, amphibious combat vehicles, ACVs, and carrier or destroyer-based escorts appear in open discussion as the types of tools that could enable such an approach. It is important to stress that these descriptions are conceptual. Analysts use them to explore feasibility, not as operational blueprints, and any depiction must avoid operational detail that would resemble tactical guidance. Even conceptually, feasibility is constrained. Kharg sits only a few dozen kilometers off Iran's coast, within range of theater-grade ballistic and cruise missiles, anti-ship missiles, and swarms of armed and reconnaissance drones. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and other Iranian forces possess a layered toolkit for retaliation. Shore-launched anti-ship missiles, land attack cruise missiles, large numbers of armed unmanned aerial vehicles, and proxies capable of asymmetric attacks on shipping across the Gulf. Tehran also retains the option of deliberately sabotaging its own facilities to deny them to an adversary, a brutal but strategically available choice in past conflicts. Holding Kharg against persistent counterattack would demand sustained logistics, robust air defenses, and political will, resources that complicate any low-footprint approach. The regional consequences would be immediate and potentially severe. Disruption of Kharg's operations could remove a very large portion of Iranian seaborne exports from global markets almost overnight. Analysts commonly cite figures suggesting Kharg channels a high percentage, sometimes reported as up to 90% in specific export windows, of Iran's crude leaving via tanker. The global oil market is sensitive to choke points. A sudden loss of supply, real or anticipated, drives price volatility, prompts strategic stock releases, and raises costs across energy-dependent economies. Beyond pure market mechanics, there is the military and diplomatic ripple effect. Tehran could retaliate against third-party Gulf terminals, escalate attacks on commercial shipping transiting the Strait of Hormuz, or intensify strikes on U.S. and coalition assets in the region. Neighboring states would be forced to recalibrate, either by tightening security around their own facilities or by urging rapid de-escalation to protect commerce. This produces the core strategic dilemma. Kharg is simultaneously a high-impact lever and a risky choke point. To frame the choices more concretely, analysts often weigh three broad options. First, seize and hold. A limited occupation of Kharg could allow a belligerent to physically control the terminal and choke export flows. The upside is direct leverage over Iran's oil revenues and a visible signal of coercive capacity. The downside is the likelihood of asymmetric and missile-based retaliation, protracted defensive commitments, and the political cost of occupying foreign territory. Second, deny by destruction or degradation. Targeted strikes to render the terminal unusable would remove it from the equation without a ground presence, but this would almost certainly compound global market shocks and could be perceived as an escalation equivalent to occupation, inviting counterstrikes and increasing the risk of wider conflagration. Third, choose restraint. Avoid direct attacks on infrastructure to minimize the immediate risk of escalation and market disruption, relying instead on sanctions, interdiction at sea, or diplomatic pressure. Restraint preserves capacity for future leverage, but leaves the regime's revenue stream and its ability to sustain hostile operations intact. Each leg of that trilemma carries second-order effects. Seizure or destruction could prompt Iran to close the Strait of Hormuz temporarily, a move that would ricochet through world markets. It could also accelerate Tehran's covert and overt attacks on regional partners and shipping, raising insurance costs and rerouting trade. Alternatively, inaction allows Iran to continue funding proxy operations and domestic control, constraining American and allied options over time. Analysts therefore emphasize that the decision is not purely military, but deeply political and economic. Leaders must weigh tangible near-term gains against the likelihood of protracted instability and unintended global consequences. Uncertainties multiply where intelligence, repair timelines, and market psychology intersect. How long would a denial of Kharg's export capacity actually last? Historical reconstruction efforts after wartime damage suggest repair can be rapid when the political will and budget exist. Could exports be rerouted through other terminals, pipelines, or reflagged shipments? In many scenarios, yes, efforts to reconstitute flows would begin immediately, though often at reduced efficiency and higher cost. Would international markets respond with panic or with measured rebalancing through strategic reserves and alternative supply? That depends on the perceived duration and scope of the disruption, and market psychology is notoriously difficult to forecast precisely. Where open-source reporting offers numbers, storage of approximately 28 million barrels, reported terminal capacities up to 7 million barrels per day, and prior peak exports of around 3 to 4 million BPD, analysts recommend treating those as indicative and citing original sources for verification. So how should we assess the central claim in the title? Kharg Island, the strategic oil hub Iran could use against the U.S. Kharg is undeniably strategic. Its concentrated capacity makes it a plausible lever for Tehran to use, whether by threatening to close exports, by using the facility as bargaining currency in a coercive campaign, or by reconstructing and protecting flows to sustain its fiscal endurance. At the same time, Kharg is a vulnerable node. Control or denial of it offers a theoretically efficient way to inflict economic pain on Iran. But here is the crucial caveat. Efficiency on paper does not translate into clean political outcomes. Any move to seize or destroy Kharg would carry a high risk of escalation, invite asymmetric and missile retaliation, strain regional partners, and send shockwaves through an already fragile global energy market. History shows the island can be rebuilt or bypassed. Markets and militaries will adapt. The immediate impact may be large, but durability of effect is far from guaranteed. In short, Kharg is both a tempting and dangerous strategic lever. It could be used by Iran as leverage against the United States and its partners, and it could be targeted by others seeking to cut Tehran's revenues. But in every scenario, the likely result is high risk, significant collateral consequences, and a set of second-order dilemmas that make any simple solution elusive. Analysts therefore argue that Kharg's strategic value lies less in the binary of seizure versus non-seizure, and more in the political choices it forces. How far are states willing to go to apply pressure at the cost of broad instability? If this analysis was helpful, subscribe for more deep dives into critical nodes of global strategy. For readers watching the full piece, sources for the numerical claims and historical references are linked in the description. Given the stakes involved, verification is essential. Tell us in the comments which outcome you think is most likely: seizure, denial, or restraint, and why. Further discussion and a detailed look at possible regional scenarios are coming next, with source documents and timelines available in the description.